Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Hi, and welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the 7 business elements of any successful practice. These 7 elements are very different than the 7 stages of practice ownership, which we did in another podcast. These 7 business elements exist whether you pay attention to them or not. All practices must pay attention to these in order to be successful. Most of us are really good at a few of the 7 and unwittingly ignore the other 3 to 4. Small businesses are especially vulnerable to this because the owner relies on his or her personal strength and doesn't understand that until all 7 elements are addressed, managed, and contributing to the practice, it's going to be a struggle in some way. A successful practice has the people and systems in place to hum on all 7 cylinders. All great practices do. The primary requirement of any practice is to acquire and retain patients profitably. In dentistry, as with every other business, retention is far more important than acquisition. Yet we expend almost all our energies on acquisition, don't we? It takes 5 times as much time and money to acquire one new patient as it does to keep the ones we have. Your application from this podcast might just be to ignore the rest of the podcast until you have a simple process in place to assure high patient retention. But we must have all 3: acquire, retain, and be profitable all at once, or we will go out of business. All 7 elements help us acquire and retain profitably, and all 7 require systems and great relationships to work properly. So let's get into these. Element number 1, vision and leadership. Stacy St. John, a practice owner, hired an outside advisor, or what I'll refer to as a non-equity partner, the best kind, because she was smart enough to recognize that she loved the day-to-day and was also really good at managing systems and leading people, but she had no idea where all this was supposed to take her. She didn't have vision. She ended up with 4 practices and somebody managing them for her so she could focus on being chairside. Other practice leaders do just the opposite. They hire great dentists so they can lead the operatory and run the business side. And others keep a foot in both the clinical world and the business side. It's a matter of personal preference, talents, and desires. What do you want your life to look like 3, 5, or 10 years from now? Use your practice to build that ideal lifestyle and ideal practice. Listen to our podcast on the practice maturity date to get more insight on that. Start building toward that ideal lifestyle immediately, or you never will. It's a carpe diem thing. Seize the day. Vision is foundational. The 2 most important questions in business, why and when, are the least asked. Asking these questions is the difference between living for short-term gain as treadmill guy or focused on long-term gain as freedom guy. I'm not asking you to be some motivational giant here. Just ask why and when on the things that will affect your practice for many years to come, and also on the things that will affect your practice in the next few months. Asking these 2 questions will help you get a handle on the other 6 elements in a way no other questions will. Be a leader, get a vision for where you are going, or get somebody to do it for you. Element 2, business development, or what we would call patient acquisition. Amy Bourne is a talented dentist. She enjoyed great success for like a couple decades working for someone else, but she started her own practice and she never had to find patients on her own. We worked hard to get her a simple patient acquisition strategy, and because she was so willing to do the work, she was doing well in a matter of months. Since then, she's always been diligent to have someone work her patient acquisition strategy and, more importantly, her retention strategy. She learned the lesson that small businesses cannot afford to separate sales and operations and focus on one at a time. You need patience. Practice owners who are heavily focused on production tend to lose sight of this. To get patients, you need marketing and sales, and to get sales, you need to be understanding your message and your market. And marketing doesn't have to be expensive, guys. I have one client with a $12 million single location practice who does 0 traditional advertising. Instead, he and his team members are heavily engaged in social media and are doing an outstanding job of patient retention. In order for any of this to work, you need to know that you've got a viable offering and that you're continuing to develop it to stay ahead of the changing needs of your patients. All of that is important in developing the business side of dentistry. Element 3, operations and delivery. Okay, you're a great dentist. You do wonderful margins. You're in love with it. It's a wonderful, high quality, and very fulfilling service. I get it. But frankly, your patients aren't buying that. They're buying things you aren't even selling. Most people have no idea what constitutes great dentistry. So what are they buying in your operation and your delivery? This business element trips up more practice owners than any other, except maybe financial management and possibly business development. We are so passionate about our clinical abilities that we lose touch with what people actually want to buy. We stay focused on production quality and perfecting it, but more often than not, people are not buying that quality. They are buying consistency and a great overall relational experience. That's the quality they want, is a relational one. Dentistry is actually a retail business, much more so than a medical business. While those of us in the industry would want to disagree, only a few things in dentistry are medically necessary. Extractions and maybe a scant few others. Almost all of dentistry is elective. So most patients aren't buying your highest quality dentistry, which you would still like to have. They are buying the most consistent experience. We're all out there trying to sell great dentistry, but our patients unfortunately aren't buying what we're selling. Don't believe me? What percentage of Americans would you say think McDonald's sells the best hamburger? Probably none. Yet McDonald's makes billions because everyone knows that every McDonald's window you drive up to will produce the same consistent, average to less than average hamburger coast to coast. It's not the best, but it's the same every time. Reliable, consistent, and average. We can count on it, and McDonald's can take it to the bank. I've heard that Ray Kroc had a motto on the wall in his office that said, "In pursuit of the most efficient hamburger in the world." Notice it did not say the best hamburger. The point, we don't buy high quality from McDonald's, we buy consistency. Guess what? We do that on the high quality end of the spectrum as well. We don't buy quality from Nordstrom's either. While Nordstrom's does sell high quality goods, we're still buying the Nordstrom's experience. There are dozens of other retailers selling the same stuff, but we drive right by them to pay more for the same quality at Nordstrom's so we can get that legendary Nordstrom's experience. We're buying consistency there too, not quality. A realtor friend of mine once gave a weekend getaway to a friend who referred a high-end house to her. The recipient told another friend who also referred a house to this realtor, and the second friend was given a large gift certificate of the same value to a high-end department store. That second friend was disappointed. Even though both gifts cost the realtor the same amount of money, the second person was expecting the same experience as the first, a weekend getaway. Consistency is really important. Do you have business processes in place that create a consistent experience for every patient, every time, not just in the operatory, but from the phone call all the way out to re-engaging with them? If not, start pouring your energies into creating that consistent patient experience. That will also create the highest retention. While the best dentistry should always win, we all know dentists who have a line out the door not because they are clinically the best, but because they have the most consistent and desirable patient experience. You might feel that as a great dentist, you don't want to denigrate your practice by focusing on things outside of the operatory, but building a great overall patient experience, including what happens outside the operatory, will ensure you have the best opportunity to impact more lives with the best possible clinical experience. One of the major hurdles for practices is to get the processes out of the owner's head, get them on paper, and then manage those processes. This is why you need freedom mapping or any version of it, which we're going to cover soon in another podcast. The practice owner's game, which we covered in a previous podcast, leads us to do things for the last time, and nothing helps get things off our plate permanently more than freedom mapping. It's one of the best ways to move from stage 4 stability to stage 5 success or beyond. So don't miss the later podcast on this. It could save your practice. Element 4, financial management. A sausage vendor buys his sausages for $1 and sells them for 99 cents. His accountant gets worried and says, "How are you going to make money doing that?" And he tells the accountant, "Don't worry, I'll make it up in volume." Well, I don't think it works that way. Jenny Sims had a growing practice. She came to me for help with strategic planning for the future. But what we discovered she really needed was a strategic analysis of her past finances. Turns out she was employing the sausage vendor strategy. Her revenue was lower than her costs almost every month, but she was okay with that because after all, Amazon didn't turn profit for years and most businesses go into debt until they eventually turn a profit. So I don't mind losing money. The fact that her revenues were up by 50% from the year before falsely confirmed to her that she was doing things the right way because her profit still wasn't there. Once she got her costs under control, things turned around quickly. Financial management is a critical element of any practice. Almost no practice owner has a good enough grasp of this. Numbers don't just add up, they tell stories. especially when you look at the trends, not just this month, but the last 3 months, this quarter versus last year, the same quarter, the last 5 years. Numbers are the language of business, and very few practice owners speak numberese. While way too many practice owners are doing their own bookkeeping, which is never the highest and best use of their time, almost none could tell you what the top 2 critical numbers are that they and their team are following right now in their practice. Do you know what story your numbers are telling you? If not, you need to figure this out. You can't ignore this 4th element. The good news is you don't have to know how to speak numberese fluently. That's what accountants and finance guys are for. You just need to know enough to order a pizza and get a cab. As a practice owner, if you are tracking more than 2 or 3 numbers, you are tracking way too many numbers. Beyond that, with exceptions, you're just playing office. The best book I know on the subject, written so that practice owners can actually understand it, is Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs. Note there are different versions, financial intelligence for managers, etc. Get the one that is Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs. It's by Berman, Knight, and Case. Get it and figure out which very few numbers you should track. And here's a hint. The numbers you track will change as your practice evolves. It's never a static thing. We'll cover this in a future podcast. Okay, those are the first 4 elements of any privately owned practice. They exist whether you pay attention to them or not. We're going to go through the other 3 of these in a couple of weeks, but I'm guessing even in the 4 that you see right here, you're really strong at 1 or 2 of these and probably not so good at 1 or 2 others. These exist whether we pay attention to them or not. Pay attention. If you can't do these, get somebody else to do them. I would not suggest trying to get really good at something you're not good at. Find the 1 or 2 or 3 things here that you're really good at and farm out the other ones. Get somebody else to do vision and leadership if you're not doing it. Hire an advisor to do this, or get a friend who's very visionary. Rub shoulders with people. Get outside eyes. If you're really good at the vision and leadership and not the business development or the patient acquisition, get that going. Finance management, whatever it is, don't try and work on your business weaknesses. Get other people to do those and work at getting better at the things you're already good at. So what are we going to do about this? How do you ensure you get even better at your best strengths? Let's find an application for these things, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Thanks. If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone, or connect with us at www.gottsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.